Hey guys, so in this video we're going to be doing some highlights in the crown of her head. As you guys can see, she has a little bit of salt and pepper going on. So what we're going to do is use some highlights to kind of mask and diffuse the amount of gray that she does have. And then we will also be covering the remainder of her head with some 7.40 from Pravana with a mixture of 7.3G to kind of mask the fact that these are some wisdom streaks. So the wisdom streaks will go away and color will pop out. So in this case, whenever you're doing highlights of the crown has already been parted out. How far back or how far up you decide to go, that's really a decision that you get to make. I typically come all the way back here. So the entire crown is included in this for me. And then I am going to do some chunkier highlights on her, only because I want some real emphasis, okay? So I'm using what we call a foiling comb. If you notice, the rat tail is a lot longer than a normal rat tail. We already have our foils pre-pulled, and then I'm using the Pravana Pure Light Cream Lightener with a 10 volume developer. The reason I'm using a 10 volume developer is because she is a virgin when it comes to color, so I know that it's going to lift a lot faster than it normally would if she was previously colored. So a 10 volume works just fine. And what I'm using is the weaving method to actually do her highlights. So I've already weaved out her hair, but I'm going to show you how to do the weaving really quick. So you're going to take your comb, I'm putting tension on the hair, and I'm literally just weaving up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, okay? Pull out this area here, and I'm going to let the remainder of the hair fall. So we're now going to take our foil, okay? The fold on these foils, it's already pre-folded. So the fold goes in the back, the rat tail comb goes into the slit, okay? So it should look just like that, and you're going to go in, push your foil in, and pull the hair down with some tension. At that point, I pull my comb out. I put a good amount of lightener right at the mid shaft of the hair. This is going to lock the hair onto the foil and give me the time to actually place my hand under the foil, and it makes the hair stick so the foil will not move around. Okay. Now lightener does expand slightly. I am not going all the way to the root for her. And another reason why I'm not going all the way to the root is because she is relaxed, and I do need to leave that space where that new grow is so that I am able to relax her at a later date. If I lighten all the way to the root, I cannot relax her any sooner than about 4 to 6 weeks, because then I have to wait for more new growth. The fact that I see that she has some new growth already, that tells me do not go all the way to the root, Crystal, because you are going to have to do a relaxer service soon. So you want to keep that in mind if you're dealing with relaxed hair, or if you're dealing with natural hair, it won't even matter. So we're going to part her out again. I did about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to pin off the rest of her hair. And in this case, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bob and weave. Up, down, up, down, up, down. I'm just basically tapping the hair and pulling out the amount of hair that I need for what I'm doing. If I was doing chunkier highlights, then of course I would take a bigger bob where I go down in all the way in. But in this case, I'm doing them thinner because I want to still have chunky highlights, but I want them to be a little more in volume when it comes onto the look. So once again, I place my foil in, okay? Place your foil in, pull the hair over, a little tension, and if you pull down, you've now held your foil. Take my lightener right at the mid shaft. I'm pressing the lightener in because I'm using the lightener in the hair to lock the foil so that my foil does not move around, and I can get through the remainder of the application of my lightener. Once again, I'm just going to kind of gently feather up towards the root, but I'm not going towards her roots. So I'm still leaving about 1/4 of an inch or a centimeter in that actual foil, only because I know that I do not want the lightener to go that far up. but you use your judgment based on your client of what you need. In this case, I'm doing that on purpose. So lightening services have to be kind of tailored to the client, and you have to know exactly what you're going to be doing in the future, so you're not making your job a lot harder and also damaging your client's hair in the process, because you know at the end of the day you might have to do another service of something else. So I'm going to show you guys how to do an even chunkier weave. So in this case, I'll start from under the hair, and I'm taking all of it. These are very chunky highlights, so you see a big difference in the amount of hair that I have. In her case, I'm not doing that. I just use that for demonstration purposes. In her case, I'm literally tapping, so I'm not even going into the entire parting, and I'm doing that on purpose. So this is going to be a little more diffuse, but because she does have a good amount of silver streaks, we call them silver streaks, not grays, we are going to utilize this method to help mask it a little bit better. Okay, so we have tension on the hair. Take our lightener, press it in to lock the hair in onto the foil. Okay, and then I'm able to lift my foil up and finish out with my application. And make sure when you're applying your lightener that you are saturating the hair. This is why I like to take thinner partings, because I want to make sure that I am actually saturating both sides of the hair in the foil, so I don't get what you call cheetah spots or hollow points and that kind of thing. Okay, now you can do the sandwich method when you are doing your highlights, which you will use a little bit more foil. It's okay. Sandwich method works well, and it allows you to cover that foil and just leave it that way, or you can fold it, that kind of thing. So I did the sandwich method for this one. So we're going to finish out our highlighting process, and then we'll come back and show you guys the end result. So we've already completed the highlighting portion of the service. Now the task is to cover her gray, which she has hers growing all the way out, but in this case you have to be really careful. So what we did was, when we rinsed her, I had my assistant holding the darker colored hair in between, just so I could rinse her highlights off. But if you notice, she does still have some gray at the roots. So I am now using the Pravana Chroma Silk colors, but at the same time I'm only using a 0 lift. And I did a 0 lift mixed with a 10 volume, because 10 volume is great for gray coverage. But because I know that I'm going to be relaxing her again, I did not want to use too high of a developer, because I need to also protect the hair that I'm going to be relaxing. So we're not doing the relaxer service today, but I needed to put some insurance in place, so when it is time for the relaxer, I'm not struggling to protect hair that should have been protected from the beginning. So I'm just taking real time now, and I'm just literally just touching the roots of the highlights. And this is why I did it that way when it came on to shampooing, so that I could differentiate my highlights from the hair that I do need to color 100%. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to foil out my highlights once I'm done with this portion of the service, so I can finish out the gray coverage. So I know this step might be a little tedious, but this is the easiest way to do this service, catering to her situation. So everything is going to be different. No matter what client you're doing, you have to kind of use your judgment when you're doing these types of services, because you know that at the end of the day, you have other things that you're going to be doing to this client, and you don't want to hinder that process going forward. Nor do I want to cover my highlights up. So I know a lot of you are like, well, why didn't you just do the color first and then do the highlights? Well, I'm doing a darker tone color, and at the same time, it's gonna take me more time and may cause more damage. I'm trying to highlight over color. and I'm now creating more underlying pigments. So instead of me doing it that way, I'm just taking my time, and I decided to do it the opposite way, where I highlight it first, then I'll cover the roots, but I can be more precise with her hair at this point than me doing it the opposite way. So keep that in mind. I know a lot of you are like, oh, she could have just did this and she could have did that. No, I did this according to what I know is going to end up happening, and I'm trying to give myself and my client more insurance on this service because I know what is to come. So right now I'm just messing with the roots, and then I'll go back through, and as I'm covering all of this hair, I will protect the highlights. And just take your time. It's no rush. There's no race at this point. This is why I was kind of glad that I did the highlights first, because I do not want to rush at this portion of the service. And then some people will probably ask, okay, so why didn't you just do the color in between the highlights? I didn't want to do it that way either, because then I'm going to start overlapping with darker tones, and I don't want to add those darker tones to my highlights, nor do I want to run the risk of them bleeding into each other. So that's the reason why I didn't do it that way. And this color needs to process a lot longer than the highlights would. All right, so let me do this little area down here. So I'm going to now save the remainder of the crown for last in the color application. So I'm just going to leave that where it is there, and I'm going to work on the coverage of everywhere else. Do a little quickie here. We're just going to cover that over so we can lift this on top. So we have a couple different tasks at hand, only because her gray is not just a root touch-up. This is all over the head. So this is the reason why I had to take a different route when I was doing her color service. So what we're going to do now is we're going to finish out her gray coverage on the remainder of her hair, and then we'll come back and we will finish out her crown, and you'll see how we finish the crown. All right, so now we're going through in the crown, and we're just painting our darker hairs, and then we're gonna separate our highlights from there. So here's what's gonna happen when I say the next couple minutes. I'm gonna actually use the same color and tone my highlights. Now, if you were using this color and you were doing a much darker color, then you can't do that. But in this case, I'm using the color that I'm actually going to be toning with, because I was using that color to also cover my grays that were not highlighted. So this is kind of like a very custom color service. So don't be afraid. I know you're sitting here like wondering like, well, what? Yes, I'm gonna use my Chroma Silk color and I'm going to tone my highlights, but I'm going to do that towards the end of this service by just merely taking my brush and combing through the product, or brushing through some product. and that will tone my highlights exactly where I want it to be. But I'm gonna add another piece there. Just like that. And then all the hair is covered and I'm able to get through my service. So like I said before, the reason why I didn't highlight her and color her at the same time is because I know that she is a virgin to lightener and she was going to lift extremely quickly. So I could not go through and highlight and color at the same time, because then I'd have to end up rinsing my highlights way ahead of time and then run the risk of actually removing product that I actually needed. So that's the reason why I had to do it this way. And in color services, sometimes you have to do things the way you don't want to do them, even though it might make your job a little bit more time consuming, but it is what it is. That's the nature of our business. So I'm sure others would do it a different way, but this is my method, people. And guess what? She's fully covered now. And I have enough product to tone her with, because I'm going to actually just use my brush and brush through the product for the last 5 minutes of the service to tone out my highlights. So it's been about 20 minutes. So she's processed for a total of about 45 minutes. All I'm doing now is taking my brush and I am utilizing the color that she already has on her hair, and I'm literally putting it onto my highlights to kind of tone them. I'm only going to do this for probably about 5 minutes, so I'm literally just lifting the hair up just to make sure that I saturate my highlights all the way through and toning my highlights at the same time. Now, this technique that I'm doing is only being done because the color that I have on the rest of her hair is actually the color that I want her highlights to be. So I'm toning at level in so many words, but I'm really just using color that's already there. If I waited and let the color that was in the bowl sit, that color has already fully oxidized, so that is not of any use to me. But at this point, I'm literally just using color that's already on her hair to kind of tone her highlights. It's not going to change the color drastically. It's literally just going to even it out and make it pretty. All right, so we're now going to rinse her hair. I'm using lukewarm water to rinse her. Her grays are covered using our Pravana Chroma Silk colors. Her hair is nice and soft, which is where we want it to be. So at this point, once we rinse her color, we're going to shampoo her. All right, guys, so we have completed our color service. What I'm doing now is just spraying on a little bit of leave-in conditioner. You always want to make sure that you use a leave-in conditioner, of course, to help lock your colors and strengthen the hair and leave it moisturized. So I'm gonna comb her or part her out just so you guys can see where we are. So you guys see what we did. Her grays were covered, but we used the same color that we used for the highlights, and that was the purpose, so that now her grays will blend really, really well. So we're gonna put her under the dryer to air dry for just a little bit, and then we'll do her style. But at this point, your color service is now complete. She has her highlights, she has her gray coverage, hair looking beautiful, nice luster. So now you can go on with your styling service.